Hey, I'm Tim from Securitas Effects, and you're watching Defining Circuit. Defining Circuit is a periodic interview series where I chat with fellow creators in the music world about what inspired and defined their passion for building. The moments, ideas, experiences, and even the circuit that sparked their drive to create for musicians. This time, I'm pleased to welcome Chris Vincent of R2R Electric. Chris, thank you for being here today. To start, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you do?
Hey, thanks, Tim. So my name's Chris Vincent. I run and operate R2R Electric. I can make small batch like treble booster fuzz pedals out of old parts. That's kind of been my whole thing from the beginning. I started by recycling old audio equipment into different pedals that I thought were cool and I could build, since I don't really have an electronics background. So yeah, I build old circuits out of old stuff.
Yeah, so what sort of, I guess, made you want to build your first thing? Like, were you? I kind of heard in some other interviews that you had started collecting old parts and old equipment, even before you got into building, right? So what was the moment, I
Right.
guess, that like you said, let's take all of this stuff and put it together?
So that was kind of a long time coming. I'd always wanted to try my hand at it. Like I had a soldering iron and I would change pickups, and I bought a couple of build your DIY kits and things like that, and they never worked. So I'd always had the interest in it. I'm one of those guys that loves to tinker with stuff and find new sounds. So it all came very much from a guitar playing background, more than an electronics background. I was more like a guy that liked to tinker with guitars,
Right.
and that progression just led me down to pedals, just because they seemed a lot less dangerous than amplifiers.
Yeah.
But I would say when it all kind of came together was I met a friend, Tucker, over at another friend's house, over some Echoplexes we were working on. He had one and I had one that needed to be fixed, and we both ended up at our friend's house who fixed Echoplexes. And so we were all kind of learning how to work on them together.
Yeah.
And he was a pedal builder already. It's like, oh, I've got all these parts. I don't know what to do with them, and I really want to, try to build something. Can you do it for me? And so this guy Tucker, we met up later, and he took the parts that I had put together and built the first treble booster that ended up, being the inspiration for everything that's come since.
That's cool. That's cool.
So that's really where it came from. It wasn't me doing it. It was just I had this idea of building an old circuit out of old parts, but couldn't execute. So I
Right.
had a friend.
From that point, did he kind of guide you into like how you started doing it yourself, or did you take a look at what he did and say, I could do this, or what happened there?
Basically, it was he convinced me that we should make some. Like, he's
Okay.
like, this is a great idea. We tried the first treble booster, and I was just like, the heavens opened and the skies, rain toned down upon me. Like, it was the first time I got that tone that was in my head. I could never get it out of any like setup that I'd ever had in my life. And I had brought this old Guild amp over, and he had some, shitty guitar laying around, but it was just, none of the three should have sounded good together, but it was just like amazingly
That's
this tone
awesome.
that I had always been hunting for like
Yeah.
25 years. I could get this tone, and there it was. And so I was stoked, and he was like, well, this was super easy. We should make more of these. I was like, oh God, no, we do not need another pedal company in the world. I follow every single one of them, and I follow thousands of people now because
Yeah.
I'm trying
Yeah.
to keep track of all the pedal companies. It just seemed like such a ridiculous thing to do, but he talked me into it. And so we had started, it never got off the ground, but it was going to be called Reel to Reel Effects,
Mhm.
because all the parts were coming from old reel to reels.
Yeah.
And so I have, I think we were going to make like 10 or 15 of these treble boosters, and we had them acid etched and all this cool stuff, and they were going to be really fun. But I've got them somewhere. And he finished a few of
That's
them,
cool. Wow.
and I ended up with he passed away, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
then I got the rest of everything that, he had after that. And I've got them around somewhere, but now I'm just kind of hanging on to those. But it was from that I started practicing to try to get as good as him, because he was really
Right. Yeah.
meticulous with his wiring. And so that's where that comes from with me,
That's
was
cool.
I was trying to copy what he was doing, which is why all my stuff is very very neatly wired, and I try to make sure that everything's done in a very specific ways.
So
That's
cool.
all inspired by how Tucker was.
That's great.
So it was just copying what he had done. And then I was just practicing, trying to get good. And on my practice units, I would throw up on reverb under R2R and just like a placeholder brand name, because I wasn't expecting to actually start a company. We already had one. These were just kind of like, well, I can't just, I'd have had 50 pedals sitting around if I didn't start selling them. But they kept selling and kept selling. And Tucker had his own business, and that, kept him busy. So it just, for one reason or another, we never really connected and got our things off the ground before he passed. And then once he passed, it was like, well, I guess I gotta just have to do my own thing now.
Yeah. Okay, well, so, I mean, that's a shame that he passed, but I mean, it's pretty cool that he was around long enough at least to show you like a procedure and an aesthetic that you want to sort of live by, right? I mean,
yeah, totally.
Kind of a cool way to honor his his life in your as a part of yours, right? So that's kind of a cool story. So you kind of answered my next question in a way, but I want to back up. So you said you've been chasing this tone for 25 years, and most people who know you know that you've had a history as a session guitarist. You've been playing guitar for quite a while, right? And so I wonder, like, as you were chasing that, whatever that tone was, did you have some ideas that would lead towards the treble booster, range master kind of area, or were you just like, whatever I'm doing isn't that, and I need to find it? Was there any sort of inkling of you'd get there at some point?
I honestly, I had no idea what it was, but I'd always listened to the classics, Zeppelin, Beatles, Sabbath, all that stuff, and there was just always this character to the guitar tone that a lot of these old recordings had that I just couldn't find. And I, at a certain point, I'd almost just given up and been like, well, I can't get there. I don't know what it is. Like, maybe it's in the recording process. And I don't know. I never thought it'd be a treble booster. That's for sure. I know, like, I heard the name for years. You'd hear about range masters and treble boosters, and I always just thought that the name scared me away. I don't need more treble. I've got enough treble out of my amp.
You must be using some kind of weird fuzz or something, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, I have no idea what's going on, and I was never a fuzz player either. I had never really, I would go to a session and there'd be a fuzz face there, and you do what every person who doesn't know how to use a fuzz does. You take it, you put it into a clean amp, and you turn it up, everything up to 10 with humbuckers. And like, this is the worst sound I can possibly think of. Why would anybody like this pedal? And it wasn't until later on, when I started messing around with the Range Master and seeing what that could do, that I fell down the fuzz hole and was like, oh, okay, that's what you need to do with these things. So it wasn't an intuitive thing for me, being that I wasn't familiar with the gear from that time period, but it makes perfect sense. Like, all the stuff back then that they were using makes that sound. And it's the only thing that makes that sound. And so going back to that is what finally got me there. But I was trying to recreate it with, tube screamers and super overdrives and any kind of amp under the sun. And it wasn't until I started playing on older gear that I was finding the sounds that I was looking for. And that's what kind of made everything click. Was the first time I used an old amp. I was like, oh my God, this is what it's all about.
That's cool.
So getting to the treble booster was just purely by accident, and it ended up being the thing I was looking for, but I had no clue that's what it was.
Incredible.
I wish I would have found it 20 years earlier.
But... Yeah, then you would have been on to making something, completely weird and different, though, that, so I think you stumbled on the thing you needed to stumble on, right?
I think you're right. Yeah, that's very true.
That's awesome. So, okay, years later, you've been making pedals for a while now, and somehow you're still coming across all of these crazy old parts, right? Once in a while, I see Instagram posts of like knobs that you've gotten, or like, just old components and things. Is that something that's continuing to be like, I know that it's not easy for pedal builders to find all of that stuff these days, and it's getting harder and harder, but it seems like once in a while you come across like just an enormous amount of stuff.
Every once in a while I'll get lucky and find some things. It is getting more and more difficult and more expensive. It's, and that's the way things go. The farther away you get from a time period, the less and less these things are going to be around. And the unfortunate part is a lot of this stuff has been picked over multiple times. And so the stuff that's even available still is, 10 times as expensive and 10 times the quality. So
Yeah.
it's all about trying to find a way to make these things work, and then finding a way to justify the amount of money that you end up spending on some of this stuff. I've got tens of thousands of dollars worth of transistors that at the moment I'm pretty sure I'm just, they should just go in the garbage. But
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully I'll figure out, it's not like, maybe I'll use them as diodes, or maybe they'll be good for, something.
Right.
But yeah, at this point, even just finding the stuff is rare. And then when you do find it, it's a lot of money. Like, I'm just emailing before our conversation here with a guy that's kind of an electronics procurement firm, where they find things, and they're not used to the older stuff, but he did have some connections, and they're just, even at $5 a piece, it adds up if you need to get, a few hundred of them, which is what I'm looking at. And, and germanium's so inconsistent. You buy 100 and hope to get 20 usable ones.
Yeah.
Hope for more, but expect to get about 20.
Yeah.
And there's been times that I've, spent $1,000 on transistors and got 0 that were usable or even good. Like, there's some pretty bad lots out there that you can find on eBay these days.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've got a drawer over here full of stuff that I don't, for some reason too, it's like I can't throw it away, but I mean, none of it is usable.
So you can't use it for anything, at least that we know of yet. Maybe there's something down the road that I'll find that needs a 10 HFE 0.98 leakage and noisy as hell.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to put newer components in some of your stuff to see what the difference is, how it changes?
Yeah, I actually did a couple, probably like 5 treble boosters for that specific purpose, to kind of like see what the difference is. And it was all like, I ordered it all from Amplified Parts. Like, every capacitor, resistor was all just what I could buy from, the common suppliers of pedal stuff. And, when you work with stuff like this, it's these tiny little percentages of difference is really what it all comes down to. Like, I don't think most guitar players up to a certain level would be able to justify the difference of the two of them in price, especially. Like, I think I was selling them for like $100.
Yeah.
And my normal treble boosters are like almost 400 or over 400 sometimes, depending on, the parts that I'm using. And it's really, really close, but they're not identical. I couldn't tell you why.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what exactly is making that difference, but there's just something there that I can hear between old parts and the new parts. Like, for somebody playing live, gives a shit. No, you're never going to tell, if you're using an old Mollard OC44 versus an NTE, whatever that you can get off the shelf these days. But that's not really the point of anything that I do in the first place. This all came about because I wanted to use this stuff for recording and getting those sounds that I had heard and was always chasing. And so when you're looking at that kind of stuff, it's just this minutia. It's the last little 0.5% of a difference that you get between, the real thing and a facsimile of that. And as a player, that little percentage makes a world of difference in your performance, the way that you're feeling when you're playing through that rig. And that matters. But when it comes down to it, like, the argument of, it doesn't really matter. They sound basically the same. What's the difference? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. They're very close. Like, the circuit does the heavy lifting. But the parts that make the circuit in the end, I feel like that's where inspiration comes from. And as a musician and a person that creates things, the inspiration is the difference between doing something great and something really uninspiring. And so that's kind of the little world I live in.
No, that's great.
It's not for everybody.
Really cool. Really cool to hear
and I get that.
On that. No, it's definitely true that you have some pedals though that the moment you hit a chord, it can be the same chord you play every day, and it's like something comes out of that, right? And then you play through something else and it's like, So I totally feel you on that. That's great. So we talked a little treble booster. We talked a little range master. You're also known for some really cool Mark I fuzzes that I've gotten to play, which sound like incredible. It's pretty fun to play through that stuff. I mean, like, again, like one chord and you're like, that's the sound that's going to make this thing, right? So it's really cool. Is there any other circuit, I guess, that has inspired you in your world to kind of reach out and try to figure out how this stuff all works?
pretty much all of them that I make could fall into that category. There is the one other boost that I make, the Hofner one, which was an old Hofner unit that was made basically to just let your guitar plug into your old tube hi-fi and use that as an amplifier. Guitar amps were expensive in the UK back in the late 50s, early 60s when these were being made. And so basically it looks like it was probably just ripped from the same pages that the Rangemaster circuit was taken from the original Mullard schematic books on how, you use a single Mullard transistor to amplify an audio signal. There's only so many ways you can do that. And so the Rangemaster and this Hofner preamp circuit were very similar. Both used OC71 transistors. The Rangemaster not as much, but they did use those. And the Hofner almost exclusively used the OC71s. And when you look at the circuit, they're not too far off from each other. The main difference being they're biased a little bit differently, and the input and output capacitors are different.
Yeah.
The ones in the preamp are much, much bigger because they weren't trying to focus the sound. They were trying to just make a guitar amplifier. Like, basically, we're going to be plugging into this radio. We just need a little preamplifier to get it to the right level that it, any guitar or bass will sound through it. The Rangemaster was designed specifically to brighten up old amplifiers. It's like an old Vox or Marshall in the 60s. When you crank that up to 10, it would get really dark as it would start to overdrive. You'd lose a lot of high end. So the Rangemaster was specifically made to shape the tone so it made these dark amps brighter.
Right.
You just so happened that the way to do that was with a preamp circuit. So you were actually getting that extra saturation, which is what it ended up being known for, but that wasn't its intended purpose. It was really just to brighten up old amps. Okay. And so the cool thing about the Hofner preamp is that it was made as more just a full range preamplifier. So it didn't even have a volume control or anything. It's just a little plastic box with an input and then banana clips coming out of it that you would just plug into your box input. And so Mike Timpson from Seeker helped me lay out the circuit, and we added a volume control to it and removed a voltage protection capacitor that was just there so you didn't shock the hell out of yourself when you plugged into it.
Yeah.
And it's a great little full range boost. Like, it'll still drive an amp just like a Rangemaster will, but it's full range, so you can do it into a clean amp, dirty amp. It works just as well either way. So that's what's a lot of fun with that. And it's just kind of, I've always really liked seeing how similar but different they are with just a few tweaks to the, basically the same circuit.
Yeah.
So I've always been really interested in how that works.
Cool. That's cool. Well, hey Chris, what's in the future for you and R2R going forward here? Is it more of the same, or you have some new projects ahead?
That's a fantastic question, and I would love to think that I have an answer to it, but I take each day as it comes, honestly. I'm not a businessman, so I don't really have a plan. I know what I do and don't want to do with the future. But yeah, right now it's kind of just staying the course because I'm such a small operation, and because I'm lucky enough to have a medium range pedal company's customer base. It keeps me pretty busy just doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That said, there's tons of stuff, that I would love to do and am working on and hope to do in the future. So we'll see what I come up with. It's all kind of a game of chance anyway, with trying to find parts and things like that. Like, there's a lot of things I'd love to do, but I just, the parts just aren't there. So
I like everything that comes out from you. I like looking at it, and I've had a chance to play a couple things, but if you keep doing that stuff, I'll be happy. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, hey, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time out to speak to me today. This has been really cool. So that wraps up this episode of Defining Circuits. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Stick around. More interviews are on the way, where I'll keep asking all the same things to various builders in the music world and try to figure out why we do what we do and what inspired us to get into this thing. So, Chris, thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tim.